Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, and I'd like to welcome back to the show our co-host from PackYourPixieDust.com. How are you doing today, Christy?
I am well. How are you?
Not too bad, and we're back in the evening, and I've got my work cut out for me tonight.
Yes, you do.
Because we are bringing on Jenny from Atlanta, but as we were talking about ahead of time, she's actually from Wisconsin, and I know what that happens when I get a Michigan girl and a Wisconsin girl. You guys talk very fast.
Guilty. I mean, we have a lot of content to share. I don't think that's a problem.
No, not at all. I'm just trying to keep up with you. So welcome to the show, Jenny. How you doing tonight?
Doing good. How's you guys doing?
Not too bad. Thank you so much for reaching out and offering to come on our show. We are going to talk a little Disney Cruise Line tonight, and specifically your latest cruise. But you have cruised several times before with Disney. Why don't you give us a little bit of your background, how you got into Disney and what you've done before this one?
Sure. So back in college, I saw a flyer for the college program. And that's kind of my Disney journey started. I did the college program. That actually transitioned into an internship that got me a full-time position. So I actually worked in Disney marketing for about 7 years down in Celebration. And during that time, yeah, sorry, I buried the lead. But during that time, I had the great opportunity to do kind of what they called a fam cruise. Since I helped support the Disney Cruise Line, some of their email marketing. So I got to go in middle of August. I don't think there was a hotter time to go. And it was just a 3-day on the Wonder. And I absolutely fell in love. It was so much fun despite the bad sunburn I got. I had so much fun. And since then, I was like, I want to go back. Fast forward, I think it was 7 years later, no longer with the company, moved to Atlanta, got married, and we decided to do our honeymoon out on a cruise. My husband had never been. He'd been on Carnival when he was a teenager, but never been on a Disney cruise. And during our relationship, I kind of turned him into a Disney guy. And so he was really excited. And so we did a 7-day out of Port Canaveral. We did the Western itinerary. So we went to Cozumel, Jamaica, and Grand Cayman and Castaway. And he absolutely loved it. Loved the ship, just loved everything about it. And we couldn't wait to go on another cruise. And so then 2 years later, we went on the Eastern. And that's when we really fell in love with the sea days. I think that's both of our favorite part of the cruise, just having those days where you wake up and you're in the middle of the sea and you're just, walking around the ship and doing, whatever you want with the time avails. And it was just such a great time. And then we decided, okay, this was our last adults only, I guess you could say, because we knew the next cruise we'd have, knock on wood, we would have someone else with us. So fast forward to now. And, once we actually had our last cruise booked before my daughter was even born. So we had it booked, in October of 17, and she wasn't born until February of 18. So she was in TBD on the cruise reservation for many months until she was born. So that's how long we had planned this cruise, because for us it was the longest time in between vacations, but couldn't really cruise pregnant. And so here we are today, where we got to do a cruise with a 11, almost 12-month-old, and it was an adventure.
Awesome.
Is there anything you could talk about with your marketing career with Disney Cruise Line? Anything you could show behind the scenes a little bit that maybe us out here that are kind of the beneficiaries of the marketing that can talk about?
Well, I was very fortunate. I came in as a coordinator under their customer managed relationship. So they did all of the support, marketing, lead generation for Walt Disney World. There's a group for Disneyland and growth businesses, which Disney Cruise Line was actually considered at that time, along with Adventures by Disney and Disney Vacation Club. And so I kind of came in on that ground level where I just got a taste of each one of the businesses. And when I first started out, I was actually in charge of, if somebody lost their Castaway Club DVD or CD, if you guys remember getting those way back in the day, once you sailed, you got the CD. Well, if someone called up reservations and said, hey, it came damaged or I didn't get one, it was my job to work with the fulfillment center to go ahead and get them shipped out. So I can't even count the number of CDs I had in my cube at times with that. But also during the time I was there, I didn't specifically work on it, but the person next to me did. That's when the whole pre-arrival stream came out, where they started doing the custom communications, which is actually really cool. They initially started it with Walt Disney World, and I actually worked on the launch of that. And then I actually launched the same for Disneyland out in California, where we would take literally, all those great details that you tell us when you book, we would customize all your communications based off of that. And then so many different numbers of combinations you could have. I mean, it's astronomical. Like when every time we do a count, people go, no way. And we're like, yeah, there is that many combinations. And so once it was done for Worlds and Land, and they did it for Cruise Line, it was great because, the guests would be like, this is awesome. You have all of these recommendations custom to me. And it wasn't just a general brochure that, you could just pick up. It was customized to them, which that was something that, was really cool that they've continued to build off of that. And I think they kind of they redo it at this point, probably about 2 or 3 years, because technology's changing and just everything keeps changing with that. And it's just being able to do something like that's pretty cool because even I've been away from the business now for about 6 years. It's still cool to see stuff and say, hey, I remember when that was in its infancy, or hey, I know the person who worked on that. Like, to me, it's pretty cool, and I can still read some of the numbers on the back of the pieces to know when it came out, when it was finalized, and all that. When they work with Yellow Shoes, their internal agency.
Well, that's pretty cool. So when you got your brochure for your latest cruise, when they saw that you had a TBD with you, they said, hey, maybe you should think about the nursery and you should book that.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk about your cruise then. So you guys go on the Southern Caribbean down on the Wonder. Why did you guys want to do that? Now, you've been Eastern, you've been Western, so I'm guessing you wanted to go down to the South.
Exactly. And we wanted to try a new ship because we'd been on the Fantasy. We didn't feel like doing a quick 3 or 4 day on the Dream at that time. So we want to stick with the 7 day and just kind of looking at what came out, because we booked on the day the cruises were first available to book. So when we looked at everything, looked at the calendar and said, okay, as of this date, she's allowed to cruise. So when do we want to cruise? And then looking at everything, we're a big football household, both college and NFL. Fall's kind of a tricky time. So then when was the next available? January. What's in January? And then we're like, you know what? We wanted to be on a smaller ship. Magic was only doing 5 days at that time. When we saw the calendar, we saw 7 days on the Wonder, and it's like, you know what? You've never been on the Wonder. I've been on it, but it's, at that point, 10 plus years. So they've rehabbed the ship. It's an itinerary that we haven't been to any of the islands. We've never been to Puerto Rico. And we're like, sure, let's take an 11-month-old on a airline for 4 hours to a place that speaks Spanish that we don't know any Spanish, and go on a 7-day cruise while she's still in bottles. Let's just do that. And that's how we came to that.
I love it. No, just that sense of adventure. Let's go and do it. Don't hold back. So, well, with that in mind, going with a almost 1-year-old, what did you guys do to kind of prepare yourself? And I think, Christy and I have kind of been through it, I guess. And all parents kind of go through it. How did you guys prepare yourself to bring an almost 1-year-old with you, as far as kind of manage your expectations of how this cruise is going to go?
A lot of research. So looking at different things on Facebook. I think you guys had a person or two that did an infant and toddler on a cruise. So like listening to that, and just kind of going with our gut and talking to other people. Big things we were told is make sure to have enough formula for a couple extra days. Make sure to have diapers for a couple extra days. Make sure you have stuff to clean out the bottles. Just different things like that. And one of the other big things, make sure to get nursery time as soon as you can, because that can book up. Luckily on our ship it didn't, but it was just things like that we felt good about that. The flip side of that is maybe did a little bit too much research into the what ifs could happen, because her piece of luggage was literally 51 pounds. We went from having a carry-on size bag, which we realized would only fit her diapers and her formula and her bottles, to we had to go buy her a piece of luggage, which her luggage was bigger than both of ours. And we get to the airport and it's literally 51 pounds. And luckily, the Delta agent was very kind and let it go through without charging us, I think, because they saw that we were going to Puerto Rico with 11-month-old. So they were very nice and didn't charge us for that extra pound. And we did come back with diapers. We did come back with formula. But, at the end of the day, it was good to have that stuff, but there was probably stuff we could have taken out.
Christy, any thoughts about traveling with almost 1-year-old?
I have a lot of thoughts I could give about traveling with an almost 1-year-old. It's a lot of work, but to me, it was very rewarding. My kid did a ton of trips around 1. I think it was because, similar situation to you had to go a while without being able to travel because there was the pregnancy, and then you have to get them old enough. And so then we went nuts once we could travel again. And he went on so many trips that first year of his life, or maybe the second between 7 months and 18 months, that period of time, so many. Formula is the big thing. If your child drinks formula and not doing something new and interesting, like, to be honest, my kid was transitioning to milk on one of our trips or just before. And it was really important to not do something new just before the trip so that he wouldn't have an upset stomach. And one of the reasons we picked regular cow's milk for him to drink, this is so awful and selfish, but it was because we were going to travel so much that we needed him to have milk available. And it's not that you can't get almond milk all the time everywhere or goat's milk all the time everywhere. So I was like, yep, we're going to go with cow's milk. He can drink organic at home. And if we don't have an opportunity to give him organic when we're traveling, at least he's getting it at home. We just had to consider that because we knew we were going to take him on trips. And things like diapers, babies can get diaper rashes if they don't use their same diapers. And cruise lines aren't going, like Disney has some diapers, but they have like a size. So if you were to run out of diapers, you A, have to worry about the diaper rash problem by switching his diapers, and B, you have to then worry about paying $1 million for the wrong size diaper on the cruise. So yes, you definitely want to bring diapers. You know that some of your luggage will be removed, but for the most part, you definitely want to have enough diapers because you never know. And you have to think back to that Carnival ship that had some engine problems 5 years ago or so. When was it? That was out to sea for an additional 4 days. And if something like that happens, I mean, you have to be able to feed your kid. That's got to be high priority. And you have to be able to put diapers on them because then what? So that was a really long answer that you probably weren't expecting. But those are definitely things to think about. What we did for determining how much of each of those products we would need, we measured it out for a week or two before a trip we were going to take. So how many diapers did we use in a day? And we multiplied that by the number of days of the trip, and then we added a few extra days at the end of each, the formula and the diapers. So we made sure we had enough. And we just, before each trip, figured out how many he's currently using.
And do you remember the restrictions as far as pregnancy and bringing a child on board, Christy?
Yes, 24 weeks. If you enter your 24th week at any time in your pregnancy or during the cruise, you cannot cruise. Doctors know, regardless, you cannot cruise past your 24th week. And Disney can ask for a doctor's note to ask how far along you are. So that's something you have to remember. If you recall, a year or so ago, 2 years ago, there was a news story about a woman whose family was denied because she was 24 or 25 weeks pregnant. But Disney is not going to take that risk. And every cruise line on the planet has that restriction. And they very clearly have it flashing on the screen. It's not flashing, but when you go to do your online check-in, are you going to be 24 weeks pregnant because you cannot cruise? Kids have to be 6 months for the quote-unquote regular cruises and 1 year for the transatlantic and Panama Canal cruises.
Jenny, was there anything else that you wished you would have brought with? Or was there something that you surprised yourself that you brought with that you didn't think about, but you're glad you had for somebody traveling with somebody as young as your daughter?
I was definitely glad we had a stroller. There had been a lot of back and forth of people saying, don't bring it, it's too bulky, it takes up too much room, bring it, it's going to be a lifesaver, and back and forth. And we also brought we've got a new Baby Bjorn for her. And Baby Bjorn we use a lot when we go out to different events. And we actually use the stroller much more than the Bjorn. We only use the Bjorn on embarkation day. And we used it in Bonaire for a little bit, but my husband said it was just getting too hot and heavy for him, so we just put her in the stroller. And if she couldn't be in the stroller, we just would carry her for a little bit. But a lightweight stroller, that was probably the best investment we could have had with her age, because we were very fortunate that if she was sleeping before a meal, they let us just wheel her stroller right in. They didn't make us have to take her out. But if she woke up, we take her out. They asked us to move the stroller. But overall, they were very accommodating with the stroller. So a lot of things I heard that was negative about the stroller did not happen. So I was just very glad I had that. And I would definitely recommend having a lightweight stroller for that age.
I agree with that completely. Disney has some to use, but it's some, and they are the cheapest, worst umbrella strollers. So maybe it would be fine for a 2-year-old or a little bit older, but even still, that's one of the things, since we knew we were traveling, we invested in a really nice umbrella stroller for cruises specifically.
Yeah, and on this cruise, we actually saw, when I was at Guest Services one day, someone getting the strollers, and it looked more like the compact, Graco type. It wasn't an umbrella stroller. It was a more sturdier one, which kind of surprised me that they were just loaning these things out. But it was very plain looking, but it looked like a decent stroller. Now, it didn't have any extra padding. So if you had a smaller child, when someone put their infant in it, the kid kind of starts sliding out. So they kind of had to prop them and kind of strap them in. But it definitely looked too big for that child. But for their older child, a toddler looked like about 2 or so, it was more comfortable. But for an infant, it was not for my daughter, she probably would have kind of maybe slid a little bit out of there as well.
So you guys fly down to Puerto Rico. Where'd you guys stay before the cruise?
So we stayed at the Hyatt City Center, which was kind of kitty corner from the port. Certain rooms you could actually look out your window and see the port, which was great. And we actually they had a Facebook meetup from our Facebook group actually at the bar that night for different people, because there's a lot of people staying there. There was like a Hyatt there. There was a Hyatt Place right next door, and I think there was another hotel like a Sheraton. So there was just a block of hotels that were everybody that was in them that night was going out on the ship the next morning. And one thing to note on those, if someone's going out of Puerto Rico, we booked back in I think August, and 2 months later everything was sold out. Wow. Because people who booked last minute on lower rates, like in like December and that, were scrambling like crazy. They either had to do an Airbnb or the hotel that I believe Disney had, the Marriott. We just looked on it to see what the prices were, and it was $700 a night 1 month out. So definitely, if you sail out of Puerto Rico, book as soon as you know. Go ahead and book it, because those rates, I mean, it was pricey to begin with. But then once stuff starts selling out, I mean, it's very slim pickings, and you're going to pay a lot of money.
That's a good tip with Airbnb. Did you look at Airbnb by any chance, just out of curiosity, what the availability of that would be over there?
We didn't, but some people in our cruise group did, and it was a mix of stories. Some people liked it, and some people didn't. One person actually, they ended up staying in a high rise, but apparently it was near a party street, and there was a party bus parked right by their apartment they were staying in, and they could hear it all night long. So it sounded like it was definitely a crapshoot for where people stayed, but it was definitely cheaper, because our hotel was $269 for the night, but after taxes and fees, it was $330, and the Airbnbs were running about $150, $200.
That happened to us over in Copenhagen, but I won't go into that state. We were right over a bar, and it was like so loud. But yeah, so maybe make sure you read the reviews on those Airbnb sites that people put up. So how'd you guys get over to the ship the next day, the port?
So we initially tried to use an Uber, because we'd used Ubers the day before. But when we tried to book it, it kept saying, "Oh, they're on another trip. They're on another trip," and they're just going around from hotel to hotel. And we actually had somebody from the taxi service outside our hotel saying, "Oh, where are you guys going? Which And we just said, like, "Can you get us a taxi now? Like, we can get it here in 2 minutes." We're like, "Perfect, let's go." So the Uber ride was supposed to be about, I think it was either between $7 and $10, and the taxi ride ended up being $15. But if we would have waited for Uber, at the rate we were going, we already waited 15 minutes and no one showed up. They kept saying the guy was, on another job. So, in the taxi, literally, we told them yes. They said, "How many? What's your luggage?" And 5 minutes later, we were in the taxi. And it was a nice, just regular minivan. And we were in there onto the port. We were probably maybe 15 minutes from when we got into the minivan till we got to the port.
Perfect. So you guys are on board the Disney Wonder, going to the Southern Caribbean. Can you go over the ports and the days, how this cruise went quick?
Sure. So we got in on Sunday. Monday was a day at sea. Tuesday we were in Aruba. Wednesday we were in Bonaire. Thursday was a day at sea. And then Friday was Antigua. And final day was in St. Martin. Perfect.
So how was embarkation? You've been out of Port Canaveral several times. How did it compare leaving out of San Juan versus Port Canaveral?
It was different. We're all spoiled that, once you get there, someone immediately takes your luggage and you go into air conditioning. Where in Puerto Rico, you get dropped off and then you get in a line to drop off your luggage, because the porters, everything is outside. And so once you kind of go through the line, drop off your luggage with the porters, then you go through security, which is literally, imagine you go through this long snaky line. And I think we made about 15-20 minutes to drop off our luggage, and then you immediately turn right, and about 2 minutes later you're handing them your passports, and then literally security's right there. And security consisted of, I think it was only 2 metal detectors. That was it. And everybody went through that way. At that point, there wasn't a concierge line or anything like that, a fast pass to get through. It was just 2 metal detectors, which now that I think about it, that's completely crazy considering how many people were getting on the ship that day. But that was pretty easy once we got through the metal detectors. And the longest lines to check in was for the silver and gold members. The platinum and concierge was pretty much walk up, and first-time cruisers was pretty much walk up. So we kind of wish we would have went in the first-time cruisers line, because we could have walked right up versus having to wait in line.
So you guys get on board the Disney Wonder. What was your husband's thoughts? You said this is the first time he's been on board the Wonder. What was his thoughts and your thoughts getting back on board her?
It was definitely, because, when you normally get on at Port Canaveral, you get on, I think it's level 3 or level, I think it's level 3. And, they have, you walk in and you see the atrium and they announce your name and it's all grand and you feel so great. Well, in Puerto Rico, you get on deck 4, which means we had to go get in an elevator because we had her in the stroller. And then you're kind of walking through these catwalks and then you literally get on deck 4 and they scan your badge and you're just like walking on the deck and it's like, okay, I'm badged in, I'm walking down the deck. Okay, it's like I'm on the cruise, but I haven't been announced. And, and then they bring you in and then you walk around on deck 4 and inside the atrium and they're like, they announce your name. And, to both of us kind of looked at her like, well, this is kind of anticlimactic. We just got on the ship. And I know last year when they had the hurricanes, I think I heard people got on deck 1, so they got nothing. Like it was literally, here you go, you get on the deck 1, you go up to Cabanas or you go up to Triton's or wherever they were having lunch that day. So theirs was even less anticlimactic. But it was just kind of weird not having that. If you walk in on deck 3 and you're just like, they introduce you and, you feel the pixie dust fall on you, hypothetically, and, it's the start of your vacation. This just kind of felt like, okay, I'm on a ship. Like it was a little disappointing. I mean, luckily our daughter's young enough; she has no clue. But for us, we were just kind of like, okay,
I want to be announced.
Yeah,
it's like that in Miami. I remember getting on the Magic in Miami and came in on deck 4. You're right. It's kind of
okay.
Yeah, it's a little anticlimactic there, isn't it? So, well, there's the 3 of you, right? You, your husband, your daughter. What kind of cabin did you guys book this time?
We have only done verandas. The first time I ever did it, I got an inside cabin. And then ever since the 2 of us have gone now with her, we get veranda. And definitely for the 3rd time, because we know, she goes to bed by 8 o'clock. We're not going to bed at 8 o'clock. So we wanted that veranda to be able to kind of hang out. And so that's what we always get.
What deck or cabin category did you get this time?
We were on deck 6 midship veranda. So, and this was the first time we actually picked our cabin. The last 2 times we did, is it the guarantee rate where they pick the cabin for you? And so we lucked out. We were in forward. The 2 other times on the fantasy, but it was close to mid, so it wasn't that, we didn't really feel much of anything, and we were, I think, on deck 9 and deck 8 then. So for us, it was kind of weird, not only picking our room, but also being midship at the same time.
We love deck 6. I think that's like our favorite deck on board the Magic and the Wonder, because it's easy access for the kids down to the kids clubs, and it's pretty easy to get up top too. So I don't know, that's like our favorite deck right now for some reason.
It was great for us because we were right near the laundry, and we unfortunately did a lot of laundry, so it was great access.
Well, perfect. Let's talk a little bit about the nursery. How did you guys talk a little bit about booking it ahead of time? Now that's something you could book once your cruise window comes open, and you can do your port adventures and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, correct. So how did that work, and how did you guys kind of plan that? Because you can only use it, was it 3 hours a day, I believe?
I'm not too sure because we booked it, I think either a 3 or 4 hour increments.
Okay.
But you can only do it when you book it. It does everything in a half an hour increment. So let's say you want to book it for 3 hours, you have to go and do it 6 times to get that 3 hour block. Oh, it doesn't just let you say, okay, I want it from 3 to 6. I want it from 3 to 3:30, 3:30 to 4, 4 to 4:30, and so on and so forth. So that's what we did. So we did the day at sea. We were just going to go ahead and take a couple hours at night just to see how she did, because we had Paulo booked for the following night. So we wanted to kind of do a test run ahead of time. So we had booked it for 2 hours for then, and then we had booked it the next day to cover Paulo. And then we booked it for one other day when we were going to do our tequila tasting, because obviously she napped anyway, but we probably shouldn't bring a napping child into tequila tasting. So we thought about it to save some money, but we're like, yeah, let's put her in the nursery. And she just slept anyway. And so we booked it from then. And they were great about adding time and also changing things. Because unfortunately, I got sick, so we actually had to move around some of the nursery time. We had to move our Paulo time and that. And they were very flexible and understanding. And I think we had to inform them, I want to say it was either 3 or 4 hours prior to our scheduled booked nursery time, and it would be changed at no charge. Now, if we came in at 5:30 for a 6 o'clock reservation and said, hey, we have to cancel, I think you still have to pay a penalty. I don't know how much of it is, but you do get dinged a little bit for it if you cancel in short term. But if you give them enough notice, they change it free of charge. And they were very accommodating when things would come up. For example, when we did our tequila tasting, we came back and she was still asleep. And we said, well, is it okay if we let her sleep? And when she wakes up, can you, notify us on the wave phone? And they said, absolutely. And 45 minutes later, we got a notification saying, hey, she's awake. And we're like, all right, we're on our way back. So that was really nice that they were flexible with things like that.
I'm curious, did you have to pay for that? That 45 minutes?
That is a good question, only because this was new to me this time. I don't know if you guys have seen this, is that you could actually pull up your statement on your phone as the cruise went on. So you could see every time that your statement was hit with a charge, and all of her nursery care was under her name. So she got charged, not me, not her dad, but she got charged. So I thought it was kind of funny. I'm looking, I'm like, okay, they're charging her. Okay, I'm like, all right, kid, you gonna pay up? Because it's under your name. We're not charging. It's under your name. It's not under either one of us. So when are you gonna pay up? But I would assume that I'm pretty sure we did pay. But for us, $9 an hour, that's well spent, considering babysitters here are 15 hours and plus for her age range right now. So for us, it was like that an extra $9 for us to be able to walk around by ourselves, well worth the price.
For sure. And to not wake a baby sleeping so that they are happier.
Exactly, especially her.
Well, that's good to hear that she enjoyed herself. You guys got to enjoy yourself, and they were flexible in the nursery. What were the things that you had to bring with again when you dropped her off?
So anything that she was going to drink. So since she's on formula, what we had to do, if it was already made, they could only hold it for 1 hour. They wouldn't put it in a fridge or anything. It would just be for 1 hour, and after that they would throw it out. But if we brought her bottle with her water already in there with the formula in a separate container, they would go ahead and mix it when it was time to eat, which is what we did for her, because we had a system. We already had special containers that had just the right amount of formula. So all they had to do was pop it in there, shake it, and it was good to go. We had to provide all diapers, all wipes, a change of clothes, if she needed any like diaper rash cream or anything like that. Pretty much anything that you would normally take to daycare at that age, you had to provide for them. They did provide if she was drinking milk or eating anything, crackers like that, they would go ahead and offer that to her. We also had to note if she had any allergies, anything like that. But for the most part, we pretty much brought everything for her. So we had a mini diaper bag for her. So we had wipes, we had her diapers, we had boogie wipes, we had change of clothes, we had her bottle, we had formula. I can't remember what else. And it was funny, too. They actually gave her one of the kids' club bands. And so imagine trying to take that band and put it on an infant. It does not work. Like we tried putting it on her foot, and she was just like, what are you guys doing? So we literally just kind of put it in the bag. And the funny part was we got back to our room after we picked her up one night, and we're like, where's the magic band? Where's the magic band? Where is it? And we went back to the nursery, and I was like, oh, we didn't get her band. And she's got a pile of like 5 or 6 bands. And she's like, all right, let me go through and find out which one's hers. And she went through and looked at the thing. And she's like, oh, okay, here's. So, my kid wasn't the only one that didn't have her band. They obviously, I don't know what they did with them in the nursery. I think it was just protocol to give them a band. But it was just kind of funny that, they had a stack of the kids club bands sitting there for the kids that were in the nursery that, forgot because the kids weren't wearing them.
Those bands also have information on them, like the muster drill number and things like that. So they would want them, but you'd think they would want them to not be in a pile. Like you'd think they would want to have access to them if something were to happen so that they could get your kid to you.
Definitely. Well, let's turn to dining then. How did you, I'm guessing since she goes to bed at 8, you guys probably had the early dining.
Mm-hmm.
And so how did you, what did you guys think of the dining rooms being on board? You got to go to Tiana's place this time. I guess let's talk about that. What did you think of Tiana's place?
Well, we were fortunate. We had Tiana's 3 times, which we were both, because that was one that I have read and seen and heard wonderful things about. So I was really excited that we had that. And it was our first time with early dining. We've always had second dining. And to be honest, we love early dining. Like we would take that, we would ask for that and get in a heartbeat if we couldn't get it. Just because it was just nice. It felt like it went quicker. We could definitely tell the difference in dining between the large ship and the small ships. Definitely felt that actually the food was better. We really loved, I think if we went in order of what we liked best, Tiana's was number 1 by far, then Triton's, and then Animator's Palette. And our serving team was absolutely awesome. We were seated at the table with another couple with their daughter was, I think she was 2 months older than ours. And so it'd be funny where our daughter would actually emulate the stuff that the other girl was doing. So she was, although she wouldn't drink milk or really eat, a lot of stuff, but she would kind of watch her and see what she was doing. And so we got to try some new things because we would say, the other girl's doing it. Why don't you try it? And she would just kind of eye her up and be like, okay, I guess I'll try this. And so that was a lot of fun. And, our serving team was absolutely awesome. Like every night they would, greet her and ask her how she was doing, come down to her level and talk to her. And, it was really nice. And we knew by the end, we're like, oh man, we're going to get home. And she's going to be like, okay, no one's here to entertain me. No one's bringing me whatever I want. And, we just knew it was going to be a downward spiral when we got home and she wasn't getting that attention. But it was great. This was actually the first time our serving team we felt like actually got to know us. It never really felt like that in our previous cruises. Maybe it was because the other times we were at tables that were full of either 6 or 8 adults total, where this time it was just, 2 families, we each with 1 child. So, when I sat down, they immediately had my drink sitting there ready for me. They had stuff ready for her. And it was just really great, that personalized service that we really didn't feel like we got on the bigger ship.
How did you guys work the food for your daughter? Did you guys bring your own food for her, or did you just get stuff off the menu for her? How did that work?
So we did a combination of the two. She was still on formula, so we had that. And we also brought some of her own purees because she was at the stage where she isn't just like, for example, just sweet potatoes or just carrots. Actually, both those by themselves, she will not touch anymore. I think she got burned out on them. So everything has to be a combination. And so we brought our own, but we would also be like, hey, do you want to try some of our soup or have some of the bread? And so we did a combination of the purees and that. And like towards the end, she was actually more interested in the regular food than her food, which was great, except for the fact is we had to lug all this stuff back, which we were hoping we wouldn't have to. But it actually kind of helped introduce her to new food. So the timing of her doing it was actually kind of good because it was at that time where she needed to learn more. And they did offer, they said, do you want us to puree anything or make anything? And we're like, no, that's okay. She's unfortunately fussy in that way. We brought her own. But they were definitely accommodating whatever we needed. They were definitely very happy to help us.
So Disney, from an information standpoint, they will make anything they have on the ship pureed for a kid, but they don't have baby food in particular, if that makes sense. So they can puree up avocado or peas or whatever and steam and have it for you, but they're not going to have other baby food for you. Just the food that they already have that they will make sort of baby ready.
So you're saying I can get my escargot pureed?
You can.
Yeah,
I had my wisdom teeth out when I was 19, and my grandma pureed all my food, and so that I could eat like right after that first day or whatever. And don't puree escargot. I just didn't have that, but I had other things pureed, and it's nasty.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think I'd stick with the vegetables and the fruits, maybe. So
yeah.
Well, anything else there, Jenny, about the dining? I want to talk about Paolo, but we'll throw it into a different category. But anything else about dining and traveling with a 1-year-old?
We definitely had to eat in shifts. That was definitely something more used to us. She used to be pretty good at just kind of sitting, eating her bottle, and leaving us alone. But since there was so much going on, it was, divide and conquer. So one of us scarfed down the appetizer and the other one kept her entertained, and then vice versa. So that was kind of the only kind of thing different with us. But again, everybody was great. Even the head server, we saw him almost every night, which was unheard of on our previous cruises. So it was definitely nice to see the interaction. And I definitely recommend, if you can get Tiana's 3 nights, get it, because it's definitely worth it. It's a lot of fun and the food is great.
Yeah, I love the music there. So, well, the thing that I'm hearing you say, and I'm really excited about this, because this is why our family loves Disney Cruise Lines, because we can travel and do things together as a family, but then we can kind of go off and do things kind of on our own. So my wife and I can have some free time, the kids get in the kids club and do that. And you with the 1-year-old got to do that as well when she was in the nursery. So you guys went to Paolo. So let's talk about some of the things you guys did on board, kind of what you guys do as a family. And I know you want to talk about the character interaction, but what you guys do as a family, and then some of the things you did by yourself just as a couple.
We definitely saw lots of characters. The way we were very fortunate in our interactions with them. We somehow timed some of them, like Mickey and Minnie and Pluto, at times where they weren't that busy. And so literally she spent 5 to 10 minutes with each one of them, which to me is unheard of. Like, we had seen the interaction on cruises before with the characters, but we'd never seen it to this level. And maybe because we were out doing things previously, but they were, and she was very shy. She was very nervous. And they did everything they could to try to, make her feel comfortable. We walked up very slowly to her and held out their hands, and the character attendants were talking to her and, trying to, kind of work out that peace agreement of, it's okay, Mickey's just saying hi, and, hey, you're wearing the same shirt as Minnie, and, just really trying to make her feel comfortable. Because the first time when she met a character was Donald Duck. He came up to her. He kind of said hi, didn't touch her or anything. She waved, and he kind of went on his way. And then Pluto came up, tried to do the same thing. And when he put his nose in her face, and her hand touched his nose, she melted down. She just started screaming and crying. And, Pluto's like, oh, and the attendant was, oh, it's okay, don't worry, trying to call, and she just was not having it. So after that, and that was our first night, so after that we knew, okay, we're going to have to take this in a different approach. And we were just very fortunate that later on we would see characters, there was more time that was available where they could kind of, work with her a bit more, make her feel comfortable. Now, if she touched anything on a character that didn't feel that nice softness, she flipped out. She would start crying. But, when she would touch their hand or their paw and then she was okay. She still would only touch it quickly and then yank it back. But she felt, kind of more comfortable. Now, she didn't smile at anything, but she didn't cry in any photos. So that was kind of our win, where we got her to kind of look at the camera. She wasn't crying. I wish she would have smiled once, but that's okay. We'll, work on that for next time. But, it was definitely, that's what I tell people when they ask us. I said, the interaction alone was worth every penny, because you can go to other, Disney places and get you're not going to get that level. You're not going to get, Mickey sitting there for 10 minutes trying to convince her, hey, it's okay. Because in the parks and that you get, a couple minutes and then it's the next kid, which I understand you have to do that. But, on the cruise, they give you more time when they can.
I have seen two things, either kids that love the characters or, well, I guess three things. Kids that need to be they have to lean into characters, and then the kids that just freak out. I guess each parent needs to wait and see what's going to happen for their kid. Fortunately, my son was always in love with them. From 7 months old, he has loved things with big heads. Not the Easter Bunny, though. That thing is creepy, I guess. But any Disney character with a big head. So, yeah, there's those three different ways. Love them, freaking out, or lean into it.
And I guess we've been fortunate in the opposite way. That my kids have just been totally terrified with those characters. We have never. My oldest would go see a zombie with a hatchet in his head, but a mouse coming at him, forget about it. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I would be so sad if that was my reality. That there's different things for different families.
Exactly. You take what you get. So, well, Christy, thanks for being here tonight. I know you got to run. And yes, that's why you're not going to hear Christy for the rest of the show. So.
Yeah, it's not. I haven't just lost my voice. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Christy. Well, besides the characters, what were some of the other things that you guys did as a family? Was she old enough to do Jack Jack's Diaper Dash, or what were some of the other things you guys found to do?
Yeah, I laugh because that was probably the one thing we were looking forward to the most on the cruise. Because we had watched them in every rate, the two previous cruises, and the last cruise before she was born, we joked, probably the next time we're here, he or she is going to be participating in this race. And so we were keeping an eye on the navigators when we got on the ship to see when it was. And when we finally saw it, we're like, all right, you're going to do this. You're going to do this. And she, she was in crawling mode, so we knew that she could definitely crawl. And so we were really, I don't know who was more nervous, me or her, on it. Because when the day came, we get into the atrium and you look up and it's just filled. Every single deck was filled with people. And I'm just like, okay, this is going to go one of two ways. Really good or really bad. And they had 2 heats. They had a total of 8 babies, and she was in heat 1. And, they do the introductions and people are cheering so far, and she's okay. So I was feeling okay. And then we sit her down and they said, ready, set, race those babies. And I go, okay, let's go. And she just goes into meltdown. I'm like, it's okay. Trying to get her to go as other babies. And I turn to look at her face, and the look, it was the tears are streaming, mouth wide open, screaming her head off, bright red. I'm like, okay, this went the way that we weren't hoping, but we kind of expected. And we look, and the other baby's done, and we're like, okay. And, we get her up in that, and, she's obsessed with phones. Our iPads, our phones, she's obsessed with. So he had his phone to get her to go. And so he was recording on his phone, or so we thought. And I said, well, okay, how did the video turn out? And he hits the button. He goes, I didn't hit the button.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, we went through all of this and you didn't record it. But luckily, when we got back, we went to our Facebook group and said, hey, did anybody record? Ours was the little redheaded girl that had, completely freaked out. And luckily there was, I think 5 or 6 people came and said, yes, we have a video. We have the video. And so we were able to get a copy of the video. But the funniest part is that people actually came up to us afterwards and said, oh, is she from the diaper race? And we're like, yeah. Oh, she was so cute. Oh, and because I guess they recognize her because she has this red hair where neither me or my husband does. So she kind of sticks out. So a lot of people recognized her from the race. And there was one lady came up to us, she said, and her daughter had the exact same name as her, and she had red hair. So she tracked us down on the last day with her teenage daughter or preteen daughter to say, hey, you two have the same name and red hair. And that her daughter was like, Mom, really? You're comparing me to this baby from the diaper race? Really? And we're just like, oh, okay, and it was like, it's kind of awkward. But I mean, she was really nice because she's like, we were cheering you guys on because you guys have the same name. And I mean, it was really sweet, afterwards where people, luckily nobody made us feel, bad or anything, but like, yeah, your kid just completely just melted down. And, of course, before I picked her up, I quickly took a picture and then picked her up. So, but no one gave me any grief for that. But it was just hilarious watching the video. And then we found out later on, somebody from our Facebook group actually did a vlog of the entire cruise. And this past week, they came out with the vlog of that day. And so we watched it and we're like, is she in here? Is she? There she is. Yep. Full meltdown. I'm like, and now it's on YouTube. People can go ahead and see our daughter have a full meltdown in the diaper dash.
That's gonna be great. That's gonna be a great video for you to show her when she's that teenage daughter's the same age as that teenage daughter.
She is going to love us then.
Yeah, get some good blackmail stuff there. So, well, cool. Anything else you guys did as a family?
I think we tried to do the splash pad, which we figured she loves bath time. She would love that. She absolutely melted down in that. We tried to set her down in it, walk her around, and she was just not having any of that. And literally afterwards, we took her for a bath and she was fine. So, I mean, stuff that which we thought she'd really like and really enjoy it, she just completely melted down. But probably the one thing we did consistently almost every night was after dinner, or even we were getting ready to leave the ports, we would just kind of do laps around the deck. And she just loved going around and seeing people. And, it's good exercise because you're eating a lot on those ships, but, just walking around, and especially, when you're leaving the cruise port and just seeing how the boats back in or back out, that's kind of fun to see. And, it was a nice way to relax, especially at the end of the night when she would fall asleep. And because we used to do walk around a couple times after dinner when it was just the two of us. So it was nice to kind of carry that tradition on, even though, now we're pushing a stroller, but it was nice to carry on that tradition with her.
Oh, exactly. And, I was thinking about that before you came on. I was trying to think about like how to thinking about traveling with your kids when they're younger like that. And I hate to bring this guy up, but Donald Rumsfeld said this thing a long time ago. If anybody remembers who he was a Secretary of Defense. But he came up with this thing. He said there's known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. And the thing that kind of struck me when we were traveling with our kids, and it kind of maybe sounds like the same way, is those experiences that you don't think you're going to have that mean so much to you later when you slow down and spend it with your kids. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because as you're saying that, it made me think of something. And this happened, 6 weeks ago, and it's still, I remember like yesterday, was the morning. It was the day we were in Aruba, and I was waiting to get the okay that I was allowed out of the room. We had ordered room service, and I was just eating a bagel, and she came over and was like, "What are you eating?" And so I gave her part of my bagel, and she just sitting up. She just gnawing her bagel. I'm like, we're just two girls sitting in bed eating bagels. And she just kind of, did her little smile and just kept on eating. And it's the tiniest little thing. It's one small part of the entire cruise, but, I still think back to that. We were just, we're chilling in Aruba, on the cruise ship, eating bagels in bed. And I was like, yeah, this is nice. It's like you just said, it's the things like that it's the unknowns that, who would have thought that would be a memory that, sticks out of my brain after 7 days on the ship. Yeah,
but you're going to carry that memory for a long time, and I think that's cool.
Exactly.
So, well, let's talk just a couple things that you guys did. You and your husband, you did Palo and mixology. Any thoughts on those?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we did Palo. We got it rescheduled to the last night. And that's something that we had done each time. So we did it twice on the Fantasy. And then this was our first time that both of us did it on the Wonder, which was great. We had a later seating. So instead of our normal 5:45 that we had for dinner for Palo, we had an 8 o'clock. So it was great. It fell on the night, though, that it was the beignet night in Tiana's.
Oh.
But we told our wait staff, and they were very nice and said, yeah, come in. 7 o'clock, we'll be having dessert. We can get you your beignet. So we literally were dressed for Palo, walk into Tiana's, go to our table. Our table mates actually just finished their dessert. And then when they saw us come in, they said dessert. And we're like, yep. They're like, all right, we'll get the beignets for you. And so we were able to get our beignets, and then, kind of say our goodbyes to everybody, and then drop her off at the nursery and go to Apollo. So we already kind of had a head start on our appetizers by getting the beignets. But, it was great. It was great as usual. The only hiccup we had was that my husband was starting to not feel so great. So, typically when you eat Apollo, you eat until you are stuffed. And unfortunately, he had to leave the table a few times. And our poor server, he's like, is everything okay? Is there something wrong? I said, no, he's okay. He's just going to go, he had to use the bathroom. He forgot something in the room. Because, when you wait, Apollo's the highlight dining of the entire trip. And so, he pushed through as best as he could, but, it was a great meal. Everything was great. It was the first time we actually bought a bottle of wine. We didn't finish it, and they actually sent it back with us, which we were kind of like, it's the last night. We got to somehow finish this by, 8:00 tomorrow morning. We have to get off the ship. So that was definitely a first for us. But, it was absolutely, we got the souffles at the end. It was a great dining. And the great thing about it that we learned with having a little one in the nursery is they asked us, are you celebrating anything? Do you have anybody in the kids' clubs or in the nursery? And we said, yes, our daughter's in the nursery. They said, okay, how long did you put it for? And we said 2 hours. I said, okay, when we get close to 10 o'clock and you guys aren't done, I'll go ahead and give the nursery a call. They know you're in Apollo, and you just don't worry about it. If they call, let us know. We'll contact. So they were awesome about it. And so we ended up, I think we left a little after 10. And we went down to the nursery, and since she was asleep, we said, hey, can we just get an extra half an hour to walk around? And they were like, absolutely, no problem. Because I think they closed at 11. So we just had to pick her up by then. But we picked her up earlier before that. But it was just great that Apollo was so accommodating that they were like, yeah, whatever. With the nursery, just let us know. We'll take care of it. And, worst comes to worst, we'll let you guys know if you guys need to go get her.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love Paolo. Just amazing service up there. How about mixology? Which one did you guys do? Did you guys do the tequila one? Is that what you said?
Yes, we did the tequila mix out. We couldn't book anything ahead of time. Uh-huh. Despite being silver members, everything was sold out. The first day was open, and it was literally the way you could actually get into a class. We found out was on our Facebook group. Somebody would say, hey, I'm about to drop this. If you want it, let me know. And then someone would go, oh, yes, to say, okay, I'm dropping it right now. Go into the system, and then they would be able to pick it up because things just went. If they opened, they went super fast. And so when we got on the ship, and I think they started, I forget what time they started, where you could actually sign up on the ship. By the time we got there, all the mixologies were sold out. All of the wine tastings were sold out. Like tons of stuff was sold out, and it wasn't even 2:00 yet. So we ended up with the tequila tasting, which we'd never done before. We've done mixology, we've done the whiskey tasting, and we've done the wine tasting, but never the tequila. So that was a lot of fun. It was in the Cadillac Lounge, and they gave us, I think it was 5 different tequilas. 2 of them were already mixed as margaritas, and the rest were just straight tequilas. And it was really interesting. The guy went through the different ones. One of them, they had you dip your finger in cinnamon, and then you take the shot of tequila, and then you lick the cinnamon, which I'd never done that before. I'm just so used to, salt or lime, and that's it. But they had that. They also had another one with orange. But it was just really interesting. Now, some of it was a little bit strong for me, so I kind of passed that off, and there was actually an empty spot in the section where it was us and three other people. So we all kind of divvied up that extra spot was. So we kind of got a bonus. But the funniest thing was we started talking to people across from us, and lo and behold, they were from Atlanta. And it's like, we're in the middle of the ocean in somewhere in Southern Caribbean, and we're in a class, and lo and behold, we're talking to people from Atlanta who also, one of them happened to work at a place where my husband and I met. So I don't know how else, that's just one of those things where it's like, wow, this is a really, really, really small world. Because, that's kind of stuff doesn't happen every day.
Our trip in the Mediterranean this past summer, the couple or the family that we sat next to lived right down the street from some of our friends in Oregon. So,
my gosh.
Yeah. So they obviously they paired us up because we were from Oregon and they're from Oregon. So they kind of gave us something to talk about. But it was just like you said, it's a small world out there sometimes. So.
Yeah.
How about any of the entertainment stuff? Did you guys see any of the shows, or did you guys do anything like that on board?
For the entertainment, we ended up watching on the TV because the early show we were at dinner, and then the late show was either at 8 or 8:15. And since she was already in bed, we weren't able to, but it was great on the TV. They had the stage show. So we saw, they had Frozen, the Golden Mickeys, And there was one other one that we watched on the TV. They had them shown at different times. They didn't have them on at the same time the show was playing in the theater, but they staggered it so it would start about 20 minutes after it. So we were able to see it that way, which was still cool. Like, it would have been nice to see a show because last time we did a couple of shows. But this time, with her sleeping schedule, we just couldn't do it.
And that's just all part of traveling with a younger child. And as they get older, you'll be in those shows. But that's what's so cool about them offering it on the TV, so that you can still take that in if you want to.
Absolutely. Let's
turn to the ports then. You guys got to go to some pretty different. Had you been to? I'm guessing you'd been to. Well, maybe not St. Martin. Had you been to any of these ports before?
I hadn't been to any of them, nor Puerto Rico, so this was brand new for all of us.
Okay,
which is why we picked the itinerary.
Okay, so let's kind of run through them. I don't want to say fairly quickly, but your first port is Aruba. What did you guys have planned for there? And before that, I guess, how did you guys decide what you wanted to do? Did you go through Disney? Did you go through TripAdvisor? What were your guys' thoughts as far as, since you're traveling with your daughter who's so young?
Yeah, so we went through. I looked in through the Disney options, and I looked at TripAdvisor. And some of the challenges that I had, the Disney ones, is some stuff I would see something, but then when I look at the age range, it was kind of hard to tell with an infant if they were allowed or not, or if they were charged or not, because there were some where it would have, the adult price, and then it would have the child price, and someone would say 0 to 10. It's like, you're going to charge to have an infant that's sitting on my lap? Like, it was one of those, if I wanted more information, I could call, but it was just kind of like, that kind of turned me off a little bit. So I looked at those. I looked at TripAdvisor and literally just looked at the islands. So, for example, I did, Aruba tours, because that was one thing that from our previous trips, we like to do tours of the island. We want to see as much as we can, while we're there. So then we know if we ever come back, we can focus in on different things. So, look at different tours that were available there. And so then when we got off on the islands, we had thought about booking ahead of time. But again, with a small child, it's hard, with her nap schedule, which was completely thrown out for this trip. We ended up just saying every morning, okay, we're just going to wing it and see what happens. Because lucky for us, she decided to be on a no nap or I'll nap for 10 minutes and then not nap for the rest of the day schedule. So it made our days kind of interesting. So for each one of the cities, we would just get off the ship and kind of look around and say, okay, is this somewhere we feel like we want to take a tour of the island, or do we kind of want to walk around and explore it for ourselves?
Perfect. So you start off in Aruba. What'd you guys do there?
Aruba, we kind of took it pretty slow because I was kind of getting my legs back underneath me, feeling better. So that's it. We just kind of walked around, and it was a good port to be able just to get off and walk around and get a good sense of the island. Now, that's definitely somewhere we want to go back and do a full tour since we weren't able to. It was the only island where we actually saw Starbucks, so we got some free Wi-Fi, kind of checked in on what was going on back home. And it was kind of cool to see. We walked around some great beach areas, and when we ended up getting back on the ship, we actually saw when we left the port, people were actually sitting outside of the restaurants there in the beach areas there, and they were waving the ships goodbye. So it was kind of cool to see that, where people actually came out to see the ships go by. But it was definitely a fun looking port. We'd like to say we wish we could have done a tour, but at that time it probably wasn't the best idea. So we just walked around. Our big thing when we go to new places, we get a couple things. We get a magnet and an ornament. So our big things for that day were to get a magnet and to get an ornament. And so walking around the different shops, walking down their main drag area, we were able to find those things. And we ended up just going into a beach bar that had a view of the ships. And we just kind of sat there and hung out to, kind of soak up as much of the island as we could that day.
Ah, perfect. Well, from there you move on to Bonaire. And what did you guys have planned there?
That was one where we decided we wanted to take a tour. We actually had friends who are big divers, scuba divers, that absolutely love that island. I think a year or two ago, they actually took a week and just went there and just dived. So they spoke very, very highly of it and told us different things they recommended, such as seeing the pink salt mines and the slave huts. And just seeing like anywhere the diving portions, because literally when you go to Bonaire, I think it's the number one rated scuba diving place in the world. And you can see why when you get there. And the cool thing for us, we were the only ship in port. So obviously people knew that, we were on the cruise ship because we weren't divers. So we kind of stuck out. But we did this tour that took us to the salt mines, which, just imagine, it looks like pink from a distance. It looks like pink confetti, but it's salt. And it's just everywhere. Like, you think it's, there's cotton candy is the right word to say it. You think that's coming up, looks like towards the road. No, that's salt. And it's just really cool to see. It's just these miles upon miles And then you come up to the slave huts, which is what they used to live in back in the day. I mean, and these things are, probably what people would, consider dog houses now for outside dogs. I mean, different things that we would see. I mean, and those were right on the beach, and you look in and you imagine somebody lived in that. And it's like, and they would work in the salt mines, which are right across the street. I mean, it just blows your mind what happened back in the day. And then they took us up some of the mountains to where you could get views and also see where some of the best diving is in the world. And there was these stairs, I think it was called the 10,000 step stairwell, which would take you from the top all the way down and then back up again to the other side. And literally people to dive, they would literally just park their car, walk a few yards, and there's the ocean, and they can just start diving right there. I mean, it was beautiful. It's definitely somewhere I would I'm not a diver per se, but if I was on a ship that went there again, I would absolutely go there again because it is just beautiful.
Do they have a lot of snorkeling there then too?
Yes.
On top of the diving? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, they have pretty much any snorkeling, diving, you name it. I mean, it's the beaches are so untouched. I mean, it hasn't been, the only commercialized thing I remember seeing is they had a Courtyard by Marriott. Outside of that, that was it. Like, it was still very pure, which is, hard to find these days.
Yeah. Well, from Bonaire, you guys go to Antigua. You have a day at sea, and then you go to Antigua. What did you guys do there?
Antigua, we did another tour, which that was very interesting. And the reason why I say that, so we were able to go to their national park and get views of the island, which was beautiful, and go to a couple different places. Our tour guide ended up taking us to some of his buddies' establishments, I guess in hopes of, trying to get to buy some of their wares. So we got to see different parts of the island. But the way I say it was interesting is that, they tell everybody how safe the islands are. And, a lot of people don't put locks on their doors, and it's just, everything is just very safe. And we come across a car accident where two cars, I guess it's almost like they were playing chicken in the road, and neither one of them wanted to turn. So then they both turned into each other at the same time, and they're on the side of the road tipped over.
Oh, no.
And, that's something on vacation. I mean, I've been to many islands. I've never seen that before, which, here in the States, sadly, we hear about car accidents every single day. And we, see them, unfortunately, often. But to see it when you're on vacation in an island in a van, and we had our daughter on our lap, and we're just kind of like, okay, we're ready to get back on the ship now. Yeah. And that was towards the end of our thing. And of course, our driver pulls over. We want to make sure everyone was okay. And
right.
Of course, we see him behind us walking towards the accident. He's taking on his phone, taking photos. And we're like, what the? And they came back. He's like, this never happens. I had to document it. And we're like, okay, can we just get, and like literally all of us in the van are going, can we just get back to port, please? Can we just get back? Because at that point, we're just like, okay, we're done. We're ready to go back to this ship. And the scary part, we found out after we got back, a couple from a different ship actually got robbed and stabbed on that day. It wasn't from a Disney ship, but it was another ship where apparently two people were hurt. And we're like, okay, glad we didn't hear about it when we were there. Because that really, the car accident was one thing. But to hear about that after we got back was kind of scary. It's like, okay, it's not, they say it's safe, but, you got to watch yourself because, sadly anything can happen.
Yeah. I mean, I know Jamaica and some of those islands, you really got to stay in the touristy areas or make sure you stay with your guides or whatnot. But I guess that's a good point, to kind of really look into where you're going and kind of know ahead of time as far as like when we went to Italy, we did a lot of things about pickpockets around there. So you definitely don't want to have your wallet in your back pocket and those type of things. So, maybe a good thing to, you get on the cruise ships and you go around the islands, like you said, and maybe you kind of take it for granted, but, still you got to kind of pay attention to what's around you and maybe not, I'm trying to say this the right way. Just pay attention to what's around you and make sure you're not going to places you probably shouldn't be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So then you finish up in St. Martin. What'd you guys do there?
Oh, well, that was a sad day because that was the last day of the cruise. And as our luck would have it, there were 6 ships in port that day, including ours. So it was a very busy day in St. Martin. And so we were going to do a tour. And so we went up to the areas. And the way they do their tours in St. Martin is they pay by the number of people you can fit into a van. So if it was just the 2 of us, it was going to be $120 for this 2-hour tour. But if we could find 4 other friends, it would only be $40. And, just being the 2 of us with her, we're like, hey, we don't really know, yes, we're on a ship with other people that we've seen, but we really don't, know people. So, kind of based on that, we're like, let's just kind of go explore. And so we took the water taxi over to the beach area. And we walked around there and, saw the different shops. And, I think we were asked at least a half a dozen times if we wanted a chair and an umbrella, which we politely declined. And, just kind of spent, the morning and part of the afternoon just walking around and just kind of absorbing because, we knew it was going to be our last day and, just trying to enjoy being on vacation. But then, unfortunately, there was a part in the back of my head going, all right, I really got to start packing because we got to put our luggage out this evening. So we spent probably the least amount of time on St. Martin, just kind of because the combination of, it was pretty busy with that many ships in port. And then as well, knowing it was our last day that, we had to get stuff done with that.
Yeah, those last days are always tough, especially when you're kind of busy during it. Then you feel like you're under the constraints, so you got to get back and pack as well. So,
yeah, and that was definitely to an island felt the most commercialized.
Okay,
out of all of them, like if I had to rate what was from least to most, I would say Bonaire was the least commercialized, and St. Martin would be the most commercialized.
And as far as ones that you would go back to, Bonaire and maybe Aruba.
Yeah, because we personally like the islands that aren't as commercialized. So, for example, when we went to the Eastern, we had Tortola and St. Thomas. We love Tortola. We can't wait to go back there. At St. Thomas, we're like, okay, we walked off the ship and we immediately saw a Burger King and a Kmart. Okay. So, for us, we like the more, authentic, the real versus the commercialization.
I'm with you there. As they say, all good things come to an end. You guys come back into San Juan. How was disembarkation? And I got a couple questions, I guess, about actually leaving and flying out of there.
That was interesting. So our flight wasn't until 4:40 in the afternoon. And, they want everybody off the ship by 9:30. So we definitely took our time that morning. We only went to Cabanas. We prefer that over the sit down just because we done the sit down. It just felt so depressing getting off the ship. We just like Cabanas. It still kind of had that vibe of, hey, you're on a cruise, even though we're kicking you off in an hour. So we just did that. And then we just kind of sat around and waited. They called out the different colored tags. And when they finally got to the point where they said, okay, everybody can get off, which they said, okay, all color tags are out there. You please get off the ship at your convenience. And we got off on deck 4 again. We swiped, walked down, went back exactly into the same room where we had waited to get on the ship. And we go to get our bags, and our bags are not there. And so I start walking around to the different areas to see if I could see our bags. And our bags were pretty easy to spot because we also had a car seat and a car seat bag. So we, looking for that, and normally we see that and we see our bags. Walking around, could not find our bags. My husband grabs an attendant and said all of our bags were missing. We had our one bag that we walked off with, but we had 3 bags sitting out the night before, which included our car seat bag, and they weren't to be found. And at this point, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go home. Where's my stuff? And then lo and behold, we look over by the bathrooms and there's all of our bags sitting there. Why they were over there, I don't know. We have an idea of why, but I was just like, really? And all of our stuff was there. And I was just like, okay, I'm ready to go home. And we were very fortunate that I had to move some stuff around. There was a nice porter that was kind of watching us. He could see we had a lot of stuff and we had our kid. So he was very nice waiting for me. And my husband looked and said, I think he wants us. I said, I don't care. Let's just go. So once we had everything moved into the right bags and that, he took our stuff, and then he luckily got us a cab right away to the airport. And I think we were at the airport, I want to say by 10:30. And like I said, our flight wasn't until 4:40. So we had a lot of time to kill. Yeah.
Did you check in your bags? Were they even open then, or were you just kind of hanging out with everything?
We hung out with our bags for about at least an hour, because I'd heard it was either between 3 or 4 hours on Delta before you could check your bags. And about 11:30, I went up to the Delta counter because they were completely dead. And I was like, hey, our flight's at 4:40. When can we check our bags? And she's like, now. I said, okay, then. So we went ahead and we checked all of our bags, and we're like, okay, let's just go through security, because where we were pre-security in Puerto Rico, there's some quick serve restaurants. I think there was a Rocky Rococo's and some other things, and we were just kind of hanging out in a coffee shop, just killing time. So we're like, all right, let's go over into the air side, where they had all the different, where the gates were and all the different, and there was more restaurants over there, and we knew where we could kind of go and get comfortable and find a spot to wait it out, which we did. One interesting thing though about flying out of Puerto Rico is they do an agricultural check. So before we were allowed to check our bags, they actually had to go through an x-ray machine. So as soon as different doors, when you walk into San Juan's airport, they have x-ray machines where you have to put your bags through to check to see if you're taking any agricultural products back to the mainland or anywhere else. So you had your bag had to have the sticker saying FDA approved. And then once it had that sticker, then you could check it through the airline. But the airline would not touch your bag until it was checked. And they did it for, I think they made me take my backpack. They didn't make my daughter's diaper bag go through. But pretty much anything else we had on us, they put through the x-ray machine and put that sticker on it.
Yeah, they do that in Hawaii too. So
okay.
Yeah, kind of the same thing where you have to do that before you go in there. So good to know about Puerto Rico as well. Well, kind of looking back, I've got a couple more things before we finish up, but kind of looking back on this cruise, Jenny, any more tips or things that we haven't talked about for somebody either sailing out of San Juan or sailing with a 1-year-old?
Just me personally, I wish I would have learned more Spanish, because everything, I think people think, oh, you're going to, it's a U.S. territory, everybody speaks English, everything. Not the case at all. Our Uber driver spoke very minimal English. We went to Walmart, very minimal English. Like, to me, if you're going to go somewhere where English is not the main language, definitely make an attempt to learn or have translation or something. Because, we were at dinner, we went to the Olive Garden and the whole menu was in Spanish. So we're sitting there going, okay, we think this is what this is. Okay, this sounds about right. So that's one thing. And everyone's polite, like they try, but you can tell that, it's like, come on, people, if you're coming to our island, at least try to learn something so you can speak, because that can go a long way.
Yeah.
That definitely goes a long way. And definitely with a 1-year-old, definitely patience, I think, and prepare, expect the unexpected. And probably the best way with that is that, we left on a Saturday morning, and the Thursday before at her school, when I picked her up, they said the stomach bug was going through. And when I asked her teacher, should I keep her home tomorrow? They said, yes, we don't want her getting sick. And then the next morning, I'm like, something's not right. And took her to the doctor, and she had the beginnings of an ear infection. And so we had to lug ear infection stuff. We had to pack her nebulizer, which we didn't think we were going to need, just adding extra stuff at the 11th hour. It really was that one thing is, prepare for anything, because with a child at that age, it can happen. And even our doctor said, she's like, what, it's a good thing you came in, because a ship doctor, what doesn't know an infant as well as a pediatrician, which, the ship doctors are great. I can definitely speak to that from personal experience. If you have a gut feeling or if you're preparing for the unexpected, definitely do, because it's definitely easier to handle things a day or two before you leave versus once you get somewhere that you're not familiar with.
Well said. Well, I got a couple questions for you just for the fun of it, and before we kind of close out. And no right or wrong answers here, but if you're ready to go, I'll throw them out to you.
Sure.
All right. So you've been on a bunch of Disney cruises, so let's go with this: dream class or classic ships?
Oh, that's tough. I've done one of each. I would. I'd have to go dream.
Okay. Chocolate, vanilla, or swirl at the ice cream machine?
Swirl.
Movie in the Buena Vista Theater or on the Funnel Vision?
Funnel Vision.
Palo or Cabanas?
Palo.
And the final one, Port Adventure or Sea Day?
Sea Day.
I'm with the Port Adventure on that one, but I love my Sea Days as well. So, well, what's next for you guys then? Obviously, this is obviously a 1-year-old's not going to slow you down. You guys are out there traveling with her. What are you guys doing next? Did you book another cruise, or what are your thoughts?
So we are tentatively scheduled for next May on the Fantasy to go back to the Eastern Caribbean. So that was one. We've done that ourselves, but obviously not with her. And so since it has the Sea Days, plus it has islands that we want to go back to, we want to do that one again. So we're definitely tentatively booked. We're also looking at doing a quick 3-day one before then, before summer may be tough. It might have to be in the fall, but just kind of a quick 3-day getaway, just kind of recharge the batteries, because, May of next year is quite a distance away. Plus, if we can do that, then, our cruise in next May would be number 5, which would make us gold. So fingers crossed we can make it happen. If not, then, we'll have to, book another cruise, once we're on the ship then.
Definitely. In those 3 days, when you add that day before, or if you do the day afterward, it really turns into 4 days or a 5-day vacation. So, yeah, you're not on the ship as long, but, having a day down in Orlando or at Disney World, that's a pretty good day too.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt. I have way too many friends down there that still haven't met my daughter. So if I mention Orlando to them, they're all going to start clamoring. So that also makes time to go longer and longer and longer.
Definitely. Well, thanks again for coming on, Jenny. I really appreciate it. And when you book that, hopefully 3-day in the fall, maybe we'll see you down there. We're going to do a 3-day on the Dream in October. So if you happen to be on the same cruise, maybe we'll run into you there.
Very cool.
When you get back from your next cruise, we would love to have you come back on and talk about Disney Cruise Line.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, thanks for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. Once again, I really want to thank Jenny for coming on and sharing her and her family's experiences as they cruised with their 11-month-old daughter aboard the Disney Wonder down to the Southern Caribbean. You know, when Christy and I first started the show, one of the things that we really wanted to do, besides meeting other people out there who had a passion for travel and for Disney Cruise Line and cruising in general, was to bring others on the show like Jenny and discuss kind of their experiences and your experiences so that all of us could cruise a little bit smarter. And I really want to thank Jenny and all of you who've come on and shared your experiences, which has helped all of us kind of learn from your experiences so that we can all cruise smarter next time. So if you'd like to come on and share your experiences, we would love to have you. You can reach out to me, Steve at DCLpodcast.com. Of course, you can always find Christy over at Christy at PackYourPixieDust.com. You can find us both on Facebook at DCL Podcast, and you can find me on Twitter at DCL Podcast and Christy on Twitter at PackYR Pixie Dust as well. Reach out to us, and we will do the best to get you on and scheduled, and we'll talk a little Disney Cruise Line Adventures by Disney. And we've got some recent guests who've been on the show that are cruising with other cruise lines this summer. We're going to bring them on too and kind of get a comparison, see what their thoughts are cruising with Royal Caribbean, with Norwegian Cruise Line, and kind of comparing it to Disney as well. We also have our Patreon page open. If you would like to support the show, you can go over to patreon.com/DCL podcast, and you can find all that information over there. And we appreciate each and every one of you who have signed up and are helping support this show. Thank you very much. So between now and our next show, if you are heading out on your next trip, all of us here at the DCL podcast would like to wish you fair winds and safe travels as you head out on your next adventure. Once again, thanks for coming back and taking a listen, and we'll see you next time on the DCL podcast.